Extract joining the dots. Strategic, brave. Who is the man behind Pravin Gordhan's public image? Jonathan Ancer and Chris Whitfield. Pravin Gordhan has been at the center of many of South Africa's political storms. He's been investigated by the Hawks, fired as finance minister, accused of running a rogue unit at SARS, and come up against the public protector, to name a few. In Joining the Dots, seasoned journalists Jonathan Ancer and Chris Whitfield examine why President Cyril Ramaphosa's right-hand man has been dragged into major controversies and made enemies such as public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane, Julius Malema, and many of those associated with corruption. In this extract, the authors try to understand the man behind the public image. Hanekom remembers taking a call from Yunus Shaik when South Africa had gone into the COVID-19 lockdown of 2020. Yunus is one of the 6 Shaik brothers, and in the struggle years, was an underground operative alongside Pravin Gordhan. Now he had a business interest in the tourism industry, and some of the measures didn't make sense to him. Hanekom, a former tourism minister, who was by 2020 a presidential envoy, responded, "Well, I can speak to 1 or 2 people, but I'm not in cabinet. Maybe you should speak to Pravin, since you've known each other for so long." And Yunus said, "No. I can speak to you, but I can't speak to Pravin. Pravin was my commander. Speaking to Pravin is like speaking to God." Hanekom laughs. A lot of people hold him in this very high regard. Others are, of course, less complimentary. The most outspoken are the state capture looters and the RET crowd, who see him as their bête noire and have directed outlandish and often nonsensical slurs in his direction. But some of his erstwhile contemporaries also point out that he's not entirely flawless. So what sort of person is Pravin Gordhan? MPO Scott remembers Gordhan as a born strategist. Pravin was gifted in terms of how you look at a problem, what you need to address it, and what you can do. Ivan Pillay says Gordhan always struck me as being meticulous about organization. During the years of the underground, it was clear that he was somebody who was prepared to dirty his hands, really get involved. He had a reputation, which I knew of from outside the country, of being very strong, very focused. Yusef Vorda remembers, Pravin's qualities came through very strongly: his sharp intellect and his ability to absorb a whole lot of information and process it and respond effectively in situations. He understood the organizational sense and mass orientation better than most and was able to drive things. And then something that has come up over and over again is his strategic sense. He has a very keen strategic sense. Hanekom concurs. He's the best strategic thinker that I've ever come across, ever. So was he all work and no play? Abba Omar says, I think he was kind of culturally aware of movies and novels and that kind of thing. They rarely chatted about such things, but I know he'd able to reference them quite easily. But activism was, like, 99.99% of Pravin's life. Babs, my brother, would say he felt like he was reading a textbook every time he would be sitting with Pravin. I liked it. Some people are like that, and I used to enjoy it. He can be wonderfully charming, although his life is not one of being on a charm offensive. He's not garrulous, he's not a raconteur, says a colleague. He's straight to the point. He might respond to resistance in meetings with a sarcastic comment, so that sometimes pees people off. And yet at the same time, he's unbelievably warm, and he's got an amazing sense of humor. So when he's in a safe space and he's allowed to laugh, then Sandy Africa saw a kind of generosity in Gordhan's decision to set up a pharmacy and effectively use it as a front after he'd been fired from King Edward VIII Hospital. The business of the pharmacy took second place to the activist meetings it hosted. It also became a place where secret messages were routinely dropped and picked up by activists. Pillay says he is very, very careful about his own reputation, very careful about the ethics of anything that he does, and he's likely to check and counter-check those things until people have given him a level of confidence. Mandla Nkomfe has had a long association with Gordhan, from when he was a student activist in Gauteng. I must tell you that nothing has changed. The empowering presence that he has, and when you think something is very, very difficult, he makes it quite easy for you to understand and really lifts you up, he says. I think his strategic focus is still there, that organizational sense is there, and really, his presence, his level of presence in whatever endeavor that he gets involved in or engaged with. Johan van Logrenberg, who worked for Gordhan at SARS, says, he's the sort of guy you want to prepare for because you're going to get taken out if you don't prepare. So you prepare, and you rehearse and you, really give it your all. And then you also go and ask other people to help you to just pressure test this thing, so that when you walk in there you're ready for him. And it's not fear, it's fear of disappointing. You're not scared of Pravin Gordhan, you're scared of not living up to his view of how human beings should be, particularly in South Africa. And how does he react if somebody hasn't prepared adequately? A former colleague reacts with a laugh, "Ja, you've seen these graphics from the Middle Ages. Somebody will leave with their head on a spike." Exactly. You'll get embarrassed the first time round, and you'll be tackled, and you need to be able to explain yourself. If you can't, you have a serious problem, but don't dare come back a second time unprepared, you'll just get thrown out of the meeting. Judge Dennis Davis has been friends with Gordhan for some 30 years. He's got a real moral compass and that drives him, he says. He believes that Gordhan found his clash with Zuma incongruous, but he saw the sheer horror of what Zuma was up to and he took on the role. I was with him when people would come up to him and tell him that he's doing what Nelson Mandela did, and he would tell them, "Don't be silly, Mandela was in a totally different class to me." He was embarrassed that he was getting all this acclaim at the time. That wasn't his nature. But he is like Mandela in the sense that he doesn't see color. He sees principle in a world where there are very few people like that. Ancer says that Gordhan will quickly see when somebody is bullshitting and doesn't take kindly to it. He tells you straight. He has no time for niceties. Ancer believes that accusations of arrogance leveled against Gordhan come from this trait. Vorder recalls similar perceptions from the earlier struggle days. He has a quite strong personality, and could be very dominant in discussions in meetings, because I think he was generally a couple of steps ahead of most people. This could be perceived as being domineering, and sometimes intimidating, and that was an area where we had occasion to give some feedback, and he was able to take that and deal with it. A former cabinet minister, with a long-standing association with Gordhan, says there are a number of reports of people who say that he has been very harsh and disciplinarian, to the point of being rude with people. One former struggle colleague says pointedly, "Obviously, he's a great guy, with a lot of humility. But it's occasional sort of stuff that I think you need to keep in mind. I mean, he is no angel, there are aspects to him that are on the dark side as well." He believes Gordhan is very aware of how he's seen, wants to be liked and that kind of thing, and this results in him demanding absolute loyalty from people. This, he says, has given rise to fallouts with at least two prominent comrades who Gordhan believed were associating with an individual whom he saw as an enemy. He acknowledges Gordhan has a really brilliant mind, but is wary of his wanting to be acknowledged, appreciated, etc., and an expectation of loyalty. Gordhan has been accused by enemies of arrogance and being egotistical, and one of his former struggle colleagues says that while he's genuinely humble, there are people who wear their humility loudly. Gordhan's public life has been characterized by fighting against apartheid and, more recently, corruption. Courage and bravery are words that are frequently used to describe him in these contexts. Hanekom says, "Pravin is incredibly brave. If he doesn't raise an issue in cabinet or in any other forum, it's for tactical purposes, not because he's afraid. The moment he has to speak, he's totally unafraid. He does it very effectively, and treads on a lot of toes in the process, because he's not going to water down what he says in order to be diplomatic. He doesn't use unnecessarily offensive and aggressive language, but he says what has to be said." Gordhan's wife, Family and friends have evidently been central to that strength. I don't think it would have been possible for him to cope with all that pressure if he was on his own and didn't have people stand with him whom he trusted and whose friendship he valued, says Hanekom. It's not just a few of us who happen to have been in cabinet with him, he has wide respect in society. That was an extract from Joining the Dots by Jonathan Ancer and Chris Whitfield and published by Jonathan Ball Publishers.